Among the many civil laws in this parsha, we learn about the law of the borrower. That if you borrow something from a friend, an animal, a car, a computer, a garment, anything, you are then responsible to safeguard this item until you return it to the owner. What happens if this item was damaged or lost or stolen? You are then responsible to pay the full value to the owner. Now here the Torah gives us a very interesting law. That if when the borrower borrowed this item from the owner was present and doing some service or work for the borrower, then you would be exempt for any damage, anything that happens to the item. So for instance, if the owner was doing some service for you in your house, and at that time you borrowed something from the owner, you would then be absolved from any payment. Now this law is very difficult to understand. Some sages say that this law is one of these laws that are beyond logic. Some give some logic, and they say that because it's as if you're borrowing, if the owner is doing something for you, it's as if you're borrowing the owner and his object together, and the object is subservient to the owner. In any case, that's the law of the Torah. And the Rebbe once shared a beautiful insight. And he said, every law in the Torah has its spiritual dimensions. And he said that we are the ultimate borrowers, because everything that we have in our life, our body, our soul, our talents, our assets, everything that we have in our life is not ours. It's a gift from Hashem to us. God gave it to us as a loan. And we are the borrowers, and we have to preserve it, and we have to use everything that God gave us for good things and doing mitzvot. What happens if we neglect the things that Hashem gave us, which is our life, and we did some mistakes and we damaged either our body or our soul, or we damaged others? Then we are responsible to pay the owner, which is God, and the payment in the form of consequences. Now it says the Rebbe, the same idea applies in this case. If when we borrowed our existence and life from God, the owner, God was present with us and doing something for us, then we would be absolved. What does it mean practically? Each morning when we awake, God restores our soul back to us and gives us a new day. We are then borrowers right in the morning. So there's a Jewish tradition that the first thing a Jew does in the morning is we say the prayer of Mod Ani Lefanecha. We thank God for restoring our soul back to us. And then and later in the morning blessing, we say that God, you gave me the soul which is pure, va'ata meshamra b'kirbi, and you guard the soul within me, which means that if in the morning, while we are borrowing our life from God, we are aware that God is present, and we say to God that you are actually giving us service, you are guarding our soul within us, then later, what happens in the day later, our mistakes and negligence, God will absolve it. We won't have to pay. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have to do tshuva. It doesn't give anyone a license to sin. And definitely it doesn't apply to one that does an intentional, malicious act. Just like in the case of a borrower, if you go and you break the item, you have to pay. But it means those mistakes that people do, negligence, and so on and so forth, unintentional, not malicious. If God was present with us in our life, we made God present, and God was doing something for us while we borrowed our life right in the morning. So God says, I will absolve your mistakes during the day. You won't have to pay. As the verse says in the Parashat of Balak, that God doesn't see any sins within the Jewish people. Why? Because God is with us. If God is present with us, God will absolve and God will forgive. Have a wonderful Shabbos.